Todd just gave a 3, 2, 1 countdown, which probably means we're on the air.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna put myself. I'm gonna fix up some a couple of show and tell things. Todd, you want to introduce the show while I fix some stuff on my end for a brief
Absolutely.
moment?
So you'll see this gentleman right here below me and above Doug. Hi, Corey. So this is Corey Buzzle. Say hi.
Hi.
So Corey, you're out of the Minneapolis MTC, yes?
Yep, I'm Corey Buzzle. I'm a modern workplace architect at the Microsoft Technology Center in Edina, Minnesota.
Yeah, he's got a terrible boss though. That's his only problem he's got.
Yeah, he's the worst.
So all right, well, we're gonna get going here. I got some fun security stuff, really fun security stuff, both academically fun and tactically fun. Teams, a little to do, and a cold open of Microsoft Flight Simulator was announced, like the new version of and I can't help but nerd out on. If you have not checked this out yet, you really need to, like the graphics and visuals. And we were talking. You were thinking, Todd, there's a VR headset that supports this coming from who?
Yeah, I haven't invested in a VR headset yet. I've been wanting to for the last couple of years. It just haven't. The killer app hasn't jumped out at me, and I don't know. Maybe this is it.
Maybe. I don't know. And then we were talking a little SharePoint Spaces today with Corey, which is why we asked him to join, because we've been doing all this virtual conference work with customers, and this has really popped up. And so we're going to talk to Corey about that. What do you got going on today?
I'm going to talk about some DataFlex. And
if that's all it's got, it needs some improvement. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if I can meet your expectations. All right.
So aside from Flight Simulator, which you really should go check out, like the graphics for it just look amazing, and all the places around the world and all that kind of stuff. You can't travel right now, but you can travel virtually. I'm going to go first with security. It's not like Teams isn't going to get some love, because Teams is always getting love lately from the NBA and everywhere else and all these cool things it's doing. But I would like to return to one of the very first things Greg Kostick and I ever did on one of these community things, which was the Azure AD application proxy. And we did a Channel 9 broadcast at the time on it. And I was so excited about this feature, the ability to securely present with legacy on-prem applications and do like Kerberos constrained delegation and single sign, all these amazing, taking your on-prem stuff, presenting it through the Azure Cloud Fabric and allowing you to wrapper it with MFA, and authentication logging and all these other things. And one of the very first things I tried to do was immediately see if I could wrap the remote desktop web client, because I'm like, that would really be killer if you could have your historical on-prem terminal server fabrics. But as soon as I read the documentation, I started to deploy. It says does not support terminal services web, and I was like, oh, because it was so cool. But it had
no, Doug, this doesn't work.
I went through my trough of disillusionment phase, and then back up to the plateau of productivity, right? But I feel like my hype curve is back, because the Azure AD application proxy now supports the remote desktop services web client. So I always wanted it to. Now it does. That's really exciting if you're a security person, because you've got these historical on-prem terminal services applications, right? I mean, there's legit reasons to have those. If you can't move them all in the cloud, or you can't do anything else, or you've got historical assets and things you need to get to that you're not ready to lift and shift to the cloud or something else. There's this kind of last mile where how do you handle some of these things? And you can push full desktops or remote apps to the RD web client. So essentially you get all these beautiful multi-factor authentication wrappered goodness all around it with your conditional access rules and risk-based authentication, all the beautiful things that come from Azure AD in a wrapper for you.
Very cool.
I am very excited about this one. Go check it out if you haven't on top of it. All right, next up, there's a whole bunch of management announcements for Microsoft Teams. The Teams app configuration in the Team Admin Center finally got out there, Corey. If you haven't checked this one out, you and I were sort of squawking around the difficulty for people to manage some of these things. The more you get going on top of it, the more these things become important as people build. And make no mistake, Teams is becoming an application platform like crazy. It is the and I mean this not from a security and manageability, but from a speed of growth standpoint. It reminds me of the early days of Visual Basic for applications, when people were like building up macros and the rest of these things. Now, this platform doesn't have those security concerns or remote execution vulnerabilities. So take the good part of that analogy and not the whole, I'm going to run away because it's VBA. It's not. It's good. Advisor for Teams is now in GA, so that one's pretty cool if you haven't checked it out. It does a customized planner for things, as well as Skype for Business upgrade, workload planning. So if you're in that cycle, on top of that, support for sensitivity labels from the Microsoft information potential sensitivity labels. We've shown this a couple of times in previews and other things, but now you can get those normal labels from the standardized fabric presented natively inside of the Teams creation experience. And then you get that labeling across the SharePoint site underneath. You get this beautiful unified labeling fabric that's starting to roll across the entire fabric. And then, of course, you can use those things as compliance vehicles, data loss prevention vehicles, and all the rest of it. So all sorts of goodness coming on top of that one. Lifecycle application approval for custom app publishing, app approval. So there's the admin stuff up top, the approval workflows improvements that are down below. They run through on top of that. You can also go through there is now an application monetization, the marketplace component of those applications built into the Teams Admin Center. So if you choose to enable that, you can get those third-party apps through that subscription framework natively within.
Very cool.
So we're bringing that marketplace functionality that everyone loves into this scenario. Now, obviously, you have some management and control over that, so you're going to want to look at that and make some business decisions to get ahead of it before maybe people do things you don't want them to do. So go check out your control around that. Speaking of that, there's your policy management stuff for components on things. So batch packages are now in GA, so you can do the package assignment on top of it, which supports policy assignments to O365 group, batch assignment up to 5,000 users, and policy package ditto. There's changes coming to the IP video policy. You can go check those out. I won't bother going through all of them. So a pretty good roundup of admin improvements. And I think, Corey, you would vouch for the fact these are some things people have complained to us about over time.
Yeah, pretty much every time we do a governance session, which is about at least once a week, a lot of these things come up and we wish we had them. And so it's good to have them now.
Yeah, and it's not like, I think we probably got about 60% of the common ones chiseled away in this announcement. There's still a gap. We just keep whittling that gap down, right? Increased automation, increased admin control. You know, at first it was about Teams, you know, this amazing viral platform, these capabilities, and then governance and control is now starting to run alongside and catch up. Same thing we saw with Power BI, Todd, that sophistication and polish.
Same arc. Yep.
Yeah, it's fun to see the arc. And I know that sometimes people are like, well, why don't you bring the governance and control up front? Well, you don't know what's going to be hot sometimes, right? You have to get that usability fire going.
If you don't have people using the platform, you have nothing to govern, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, if we didn't get people in motion and passionate about it, then maybe governance would shut down all the features that would get people. So it's not like, you know, there's a little social science to this as well. But anyway, so I'm super happy about this. And don't forget, our last mile of control is always training of our users. These are real humans at the end who can be responsible about their actions. And we're culturally inside of Microsoft, we tend to empower our people. We give training and guidance and frameworks, and we expect people to behave. Now, I know sometimes you have rules and regulations that require you to do certain things, and that's when the governance plays catch up against the hard rules and data loss prevention you have to have. So it's always a balance between those things. I just like that we're playing catch up on that game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As far as the other half of Teams, I was scrolled down because I was talking about something with somebody else, so apologize for the fast scroll. There were some announcements on the new multi-window meeting and calling experiences that are on top of things. There's the lobby settings, who can bypass the lobby, like only me, so you can be the first person in. Now, remember, if you do choose the only me and you go on vacation and don't start your meeting, this used to be a thing that was the requirement. Like if you go back to the way days of OCS 2007 prior to R2, and everyone's like, you need a way to bypass the lobby. Well, now you can revert back to 2007 and lock the heck out of your meeting. But if you do, then you're gonna then your meeting is locked. There was some support for video gallery only layouts, some raise hand components for things and stuff in the meeting room. So a lot of the Teams client features playing catch up on the current meeting room release. Direct guest join, which we talked about announced, that lets people get people into a Cisco WebEx meeting. And there's some nice videos on this out on YouTube. A couple of the Teams technical specialists did some recordings of exactly what this thing looks like on top of it. So you can go track those down. I'll see if I can get the URL to post it. But
so what's the scenario there? I maybe missed it.
Oh, well, so you get invited to a WebEx meeting because your customer or your person who invited you uses WebEx. You can go tap on the join button and it'll take you out to the WebEx meeting.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It even has, they even show the experience in the YouTube video that they had out there. Like what happens if that person hasn't like opened the meeting yet, or like they show some like common, you know, like failback experiences too. So
Yeah.
the experience is pretty good. Like it seems to be polished out. Now again, it's, you know,
if you
yeah.
put the video in the OneNote, I'll get that posted to the show notes.
Yeah, Kurt Lockman had sent it over to me. He's one of the team site specialists. And another guy made the full video of the entire thing working. So I'll toss that one out,
Cool.
so we can go on top of that. We already talked about a little bit, but the Teams admin managing the Teams rooms and Teams devices within the Teams admin center. So that secondary admin portal and stuff is going away, collapsing down into consolidated admin portals and all the rest of the stuff. Don't forget there is the team room standard and the premium where you get the 24/7 management and monitoring capabilities. So you should check that out if that's of interest to it. But there's a whole offering in the blog link around that. Chat got my favorite missing feature, which is contextual search. I paused for Todd to go, we didn't have that, you know, so the but you can actually now go search in a specific area.
Yes.
So
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that in preview, but now it's out there. The new file share experience is in there, where if you go into OneDrive and you click to go to the file, it does the share experience where it brings the sharing dialog in.
Just go back to real quick. I've had a lot of people, either anecdotally, all anecdotally, I guess, whether I'm on Twitter or just having conversations with people. People have oft complained about search in Teams. I've found that with some of the changes over the last few months, I won't say that it's not a standout feature for me, but I think that's okay. I'm always able to find what I'm looking for. I'll say that. And I think that's at least from my experience, something that I mean, that's what you need, right? You need to be able to find your stuff. So
and being able to say, I want to find it in here, not find it everywhere, is a critical thing. And scoped search is critical, and so there you go. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the new file share experience is pretty cool. It brings that consistent file sharing. So if you toss a link into a component, then it prompts you for the file sharing experience, and you're gonna have to go through that dialogue, which of course then is governed by all the other policies and rules. So you have all that going on. So you can stay connected to the Yammer communities in the Teams mobile app. Yeah. So we're bringing the Yammer communities integration into Teams Mobile, which I'm super excited about. And again, I love that differentiation of here are my communities, these are my teams. And maybe you're a small enough organization, it doesn't matter, but for a lot, it does. Communities are different than teams. They're community is something you drop in on, you see what's going on, you can just kind of audit them. Teams, there's a little more expectation. You're an active participant in it from a cultural, so anyway, there's a thought on top of that. Where I talked about the other admin stuff as a separate on top of it, but in the developer and platform stuff, there was a DataFlex announcement, which Bart Sneary is going to cover and on his show for Dynamics Fortnite Friday. So my suggestion there is go look up Dynamics Fortnite Fridays and tune in to Bart while he runs through the Microsoft DataFlex, which is essentially a built-in relational database framework for teams that you can deploy, manage, and use and build applications on top of. So I struggle for an analogy that doesn't invoke bad history, but there's a little, in a good way, the accessibility of access to this kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't mean the legacy of access where you have all these silos of isolated information and bad governance and control. I mean the approach, like with the VBA analogy, these were highly approachable and end users loved this technology.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about this, just give a little intro, but to your point, probably going to be a good deep dive, and we'll talk about this. Future.
All right, so I'll leave that. The new Power BI app for Teams, you covering that one? I didn't look.
Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I'll just we'll roll through that one. There's a new one, and it has new capabilities and integration on top of it. So better Power BI rendering and presentation and selection within Teams on top of it. There is also the new meetings extensibility point for Teams applications. So those are for developer extensions. So you can have sort of developer extensions and integrations into your meetings. So if you'll look, there's like a little business canvas on the bottom side of that. So there'll be some cool extensibility frameworks into meetings. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there could be a lot of things you could do around that. Prioritize agendas, or I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff. Single sign-on support. We talked about this in preview for Teams apps with Azure AD. So you get that common auth token. So you're not getting that crash out, even or a slide out experience for authentication. You get that nice integration on top of it. And then the Teams toolkit, which was in preview, I think went to GA, was the status on top of that. Teams Graph API updates on top of it. And this one's pretty cool because there was granular permissions for proactive messaging turned in. So some of the security needles got tightened up on top of it. And then user attribution for bot messages. So if you'll notice the difference up top on the poll, right, versus the person via poll. So you kind of get some of those more contextual components on top of it. Frontline got time clock for web and desktop, and new policy packages for managers. Teams for Education got the student lobby, school data sync. Teams and Gov got a bunch of announcements for meeting attendee limits increasing, simultaneous video, raise hands in GCC, High, and DoD. PSTN phone participants are masked now from DoD. You only see the last, couple digits of it. And so a lot of those catch-up components that were on top of it. There were also some other improvements around like mass dial-in for lobby concurrency and other things that hit the services behind the scenes, so you can see on the deeper blogs if you peel it back. There's still a lot of really great engineering work to accommodate the rapidly evolving. I think most people are going to be at home for a lot longer than we expected, and so things you could tolerate are now becoming things you just can't. And so a massive amount of stuff. I got two more things, and we'll turn it over to Corey and get it to you. We were off for a week, so there's a lot. The only thing I want to point out is To-Do is now integrated with the M365 application suite. So there's a lot there where you can actually get the native To-Do integration where you're dragging tasks over and they have all that kind of focused integration on top of it. It's also integrated in, therefore, to the compliance and discovery framework. So To-Do got a huge uplift coming into Teams and Outlook, or you can see those things in To-Do. So you got all your places you live, either in your collaboration environment, your mail environment, or in a standalone To-Do environment. Those are now fused, and they're under the governance and compliance envelope that exists within M365. So pretty cool that To-Do had that advancement and full integration into M365.
I think this is one of the bigger things. I might be the only kind of task nerd, but the unification of tasks that we've all wanted probably for how many years is starting to come true, and I think it's going to be huge.
You called this one, actually, Corey. Like, this was one of your big, like, they're going to unify this. This is all going to come together. Like, about a year or a little over a year ago, you were on the show and you were like, this is going to be something, all this task stuff, because it's a huge challenge for people, and and the integration of this with their plans and things trying to get people done, coordinate the work that people want to cross off as getting done. If you combine that also with the family announcements around the To-Do stuff, Todd, and I know you're a huge believer in that, like, you can kind of get yourself organized.
Oh yeah.
If you're a lists person, and I'm a sort of a David Allen getting things done disciple. So for me, this is like, if they added the little context flags and I could have, some of those kind of things. So I'm looking forward to the evolution of this now that it's fused. See what we can do with it.
That's great.
I got my only last thing is to go read this. If you are building anything and you're leveraging open source components or other people's components on top of it, you're building something that you're composing from other things. And so this is a thoughtful security post around software composition analysis. It talks about how do you analyze the things that you're using to make the thing your users use. And so, because you're going to present it as a trusted resource at the end, but how do you know that the chain of trust is valid? And so this is a thoughtful post around software composition analysis. I think it's something we all should be aware of in the security industry. You're trusting these marketplaces, you're trusting these build components you're using, and how are you gonna guarantee those from a security framework standpoint? So I think if you're not aware of this and you're in the security side, it's something you should start ramping your mind around as to how you're gonna either use third-party services or native capabilities to do that composition analysis of the things you build and the things you use to build the things you build. And I know it's like my nerdy security hat coming out, but I thought I'd bookend it. A whole lot of Teams, To-Do announcements, and some stuff, right? Okay, so I'm gonna put a hard stop on mine, having run way long, and give Corey a few minutes to talk about SharePoint Spaces. And I'm gonna shift over, Corey. I'm gonna cue this up, but you can start chatting about it while I do that.
Yeah, thanks. So we wanted to show this because lately, the past couple months, as I'm sure all of you have experienced, the conversations have just shifted to, all right, things have changed. No more in-person conferences or trade shows. So everybody's talking about how do we do something different? How do we still have the same effect of trade shows or conferences, but do them all virtually because it might be a while before we're back there. So what we're going to show today is a technology called SharePoint Spaces. As some of you may recall, it was probably first announced, I don't know, a couple years ago. And I was talking with the guys, and when I first saw it a couple years ago, it's a 3D technology to go into SharePoint. So at first I was like, oh, great. I will put on my HoloLens and traverse my document libraries to look at Word documents. Sounds great, right? So it didn't really kind of do anything for the last couple of years. And then just recently it went to public preview. And this was the light bulb for me when Michelle Gilbert, a local technical specialist, showed me a post from Bill Gennady and Sam Brown, which we'll link to in the show notes. They kind of showed us how we can do virtual conferences or virtual trade shows in SharePoint Spaces. So I'm just going to show you a quick virtual trade show that I put together in SharePoint Online, and just kind of give you an idea for how we might do things differently now that everybody's remote. So I'm in a SharePoint space. If I just kind of bring this back, you'll see I'm just in a SharePoint Online site. This is a space is a little more than a page that has some 3D capabilities. So I'm in a space. I do not have a headset on. I am just in a modern browser that I can use my left mouse click to just move around here. And so I've set up this 3D virtual space that I can kind of pan around. Maybe I've got the keynote up here, a video that we can watch. I've got some other things around here just to give you some ideas. Maybe we want to show off our products, our sessions, but you'll notice it's all 3D. The setup is all WYSIWYG, which I'll show you in a little bit. Maybe we want to do vendor booths to emulate how we used to have people just walk up and talk to people. So maybe we've got Teams meetings in there. So I'm going to click on sessions. It's going to take us to another space in SharePoint Online. And you'll notice I got a different, a soothing mountain background here. And I've got some sessions lined up, and maybe when I click on them, they go to live events or collaborative Teams meetings, whatever you want. These can be links to anything. Just to give you an idea of how, Doug says, we can still give you want a bunch of lists with some links, document library, we can do that. But where people are kind of struggling, what they don't have is that registration kind of area. That's something you got to kind of build yourself or build on SharePoint. The meetings and the live events you can do, obviously, but this is a different idea on making a virtual space for something that traditionally was never ever virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you go back around to like the main lobby area and go into the products thing, anything you load in here for 3D that you create or go get from 3D Paint, you can simply drop in here and become part of your navigation scheme or anything else. So this is highly approachable. You can actually use the little, if you have a VR headset, you can use 3D Paint to make your own stuff or load in any engineering diagrams or components you have. But if you have anything that is 3D and you want to have people be able to explore that, any object you have, the sort of open source 3D rendering engines that are in a modern browser lets you pull it open and then sort of spin and explore those objects and stuff. So if you want to do a virtual trade show around, or a virtual like knowledge summit or something else like that, you want to have meeting rooms and kind of give a navigation metaphor that feels like you could have someone go in with a 360 camera, take a picture or convert an existing panorama to a 360 photo and have your actual space. You know what I mean? Like that people walk into and have that be a navigation on top of it. So it's not a difficult thing to do. There's the 3D catalog components that's out there. So Corey's going to grab something and toss it in, and now you've got that object is now inserted in. And these are just normal 3D objects that you could that you can go grab out of the catalog that's out there, and you can make those things then explorable or navigation items for use throughout your offering. So we've had customers who are looking for, and then he's doing the add action on the side. It says, what do you want to do? Do you want to link to another space? Do you want to link to a page or do something else? And that's how you kind of build up these navigation metaphors within the SharePoint spaces. And so as our customers have been looking for a metaphor for, I want to have some internal sessions, a keynote, I want to have some breakouts, I want to have some hangout spaces, but I want, other than like maybe a calendar list, a bunch of overlapping stuff, I want to have a visual metaphor where people can feel maybe a little more connected. I'm going to go into the lobby. This You know, it's not like you still can't have a Power App with your session scheduler. You could totally do that. But we thought this was a creative metaphor for giving an alternate exploration vehicle for it. And the difficulty to set it up, Corey, is
minimal.
I just did. I'm not a 3D person. I don't. If you have 3D assets, get those people that are good at to provide it. But it's all WYSIWYG. You saw me add stuff. It's creating pages. The one thing that you'll need to do, which will be included in the links in the show notes, is it's a preview feature that you just go enable in SharePoint. Once you do that, then you can go create a space and then just start dumping links and images and 3D stuff in there. So all you got to do is come down and turn this on, and then once you do that, you'll be able to create spaces.
And you can do that just on a specific site collection, right? So you're
Correct.
not enabling it everywhere, which is
Correct.
another important thing. If you want to do this, you're like, I'm not going to turn this on for everyone to go start going wild on 3D. You can just turn it on for your prototype virtual conference location.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like, you know, I mentioned to Corey before we went live is that, you know, I remember hearing about this a few years ago, and then it was crickets for me, at least from my perspective, for a while. Maybe I hadn't been paying attention, but it looks like we're kind of getting back to riffing on this, and I hope we continue to do that. I would love to maybe even see some integration with Teams or something like that. But, you know, I think getting creative with these metaphors and engaging people that are remote is going to be critical. And I think I love to see the creativity on what people are doing here. So this is awesome.
Yeah, and like some of the teams integrate. You can already do is like link to the meetings, the keynotes, the breakout sessions, all that kind of jazz, right? And it is SharePoint, so you can get pretty creative with this under the covers as we populate these things. And yeah, so anyway, I think it's a metaphor worth exploring, and it gives kind of a new take on maybe some of those internal conferences and trade shows.
And frankly, I mean, this is how our brains work more than like lists of things anyway, right?
Yeah.
So this is great. I love this.
Just don't go crazy and put 50 things in a room or anything like that. But what the last two things I'll say are there's no plugin, right? Just a modern browser. I don't need a headset. You can use it as a no plugin. Not Silverlight, no Silverlight. And then this is SharePoint. So you want to invite external parties, your partners. This is just SharePoint Online. So you can invite them. It doesn't just have to be people at work.
Nice.
True story. My favorite running shirt has the comfy running shirt is an I Heart Silverlight shirt. So it's and I do occasionally get snarky comments when I'm like out on the, from somebody will be like, it's dead,
or something.
Get over it. I'm like, man, there must be a lot of nerds out running on the places I run. Exactly. So exactly. All right. Well, Corey, if you can hang with us, that'd be awesome. I'm gonna Todd, I'm gonna do this and then we'll transition over. So if you want to share out to me.
Yeah, sure.
Get you queued up.
And let me do that.
I gotta take myself off of do not allow yourself to be bothered. We're doing all sorts of crazy sharings today, so fire away, sir. Here we go.
You got it?
I do. So one moment while I queue this up. Shrink that down. And I'll have you ready in like 2 seconds, because if I don't go back and do not disturb, it's that time of year in Microsoft where everybody bothers the heck out of you.
It's that time of year in that it's one of the 12 months.
It's kind of fair. All right, so you should be on screen now and you should be ready to go. All
right, I'm going to assume that's true. So, all right, I'm going to go through this because I don't want to keep everybody too long, but if you want to stick with me, there's some cool stuff here. So I won't spend too much time on this because I don't know how much of a developer audience we have, but I think this just shows a little more dedication to the reality of modern web. Like in React I was talking about this to somebody yesterday, like React and JavaScript. And I mean, that's just the way that the web is right now. So we've announced and released a React component for Power BI embedded. So if you're creating a React application using JavaScript, of course, TypeScript, you can now more easily use Power BI embedded. I mean, I think really that says it all. Just go check that out. We have some documentation up here over on GitHub that you can check out along with a demo. But this is pretty straightforward. So I'm sure those of you that are using Power BI embedded in your React apps will definitely appreciate this. Now here, I usually don't cover or talk about the gateway updates because they're pretty mundane at this point. Usually they're You know, the updated mashup engine. But this was there's a couple things in here this month that I thought were worth calling out. We've added OAuth support to the gateway, which now I'd actually, it doesn't call it out, but I was wondering, you know, why did we add OAuth support for SQL and for Kusto? So for Kusto, that's like application insights, Azure Monitor, those kinds of things. That makes a lot of sense. So for SQL Server, for SQL Azure, usually you don't need a gateway. So my thought here is that maybe this is for Azure DBs that are on a service endpoint to go. They would have to go through the gateway. That's my thought here as to why.
If you had tight restrictions on Azure network pathing, this would allow you to do the pass through that way through your own. You'd be essentially tromboning through your own access point. Was there one of the other call outs a specific entrance point? Was that what it was up there? Did I see that? Yep, there it is. Select your own Azure relay for the data gateway.
Yeah, that's a separate. That I'll talk about that one in a second. I think those are unrelated, but I think you're right. I think this has to do with networking and those kinds of things, so that you can use your Azure AD login to your Azure SQL, but through a gateway. Usually, you wouldn't have to do that, but if you're on a private endpoint, then of course you're going to have to go through that gateway to do that. So that's the only thing I can think of. Doug, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I would imagine there's got to be customer scenarios for it.
Yeah,
it's
so
designed to overcome some kind of security network routing scenario.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Now this one is interesting. So if you've looked into the back end of how these gateways work, it's used what used to be the Service Bus Relay, which has now been rebranded to Azure Relay, and we stand that up for you. That's transparent. But now we allow you to. And this probably also addresses some of these compliance and governance scenarios on the customer side, where we allow you to provision your own Azure Relay and then leverage that in the on-prem gateway, which is pretty cool because this is the very first time we've ever allowed you to do that. The gateway has worked this way for 5-6 years now at this point. So that's kind of cool that we've enabled you to do that.
I would imagine you'd want to make sure you read all that to understand what responsibilities you just took on.
I would imagine you would want to do that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because I would have bet that we were doing a lot of work for you, and now it's like, well, you may do this yourself, but do you want to?
Absolutely. And if you don't know why you'd want to do this, you don't want to do this, right? This is really only if you really need to do this for some compliance or some kind of scenario like security that you need to own the life cycle of that Azure Relay. Other than that, let us do it. That's been working well for most people for 5 years. So I would say that's a good call. All right. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this but I do want to talk about DataFlex just for a moment here. So if you've probably heard us talk about the Common Data Service, maybe some of you are users of the Common Data Service, which is that kind of like, I think Doug's analogy of Access is decent, right? Where as a data repository, but a centralized data repository where you can share and create entities in a central location and then share those entities and data across different applications, whether those are like Microsoft things like Power BI, or you're creating your own Power Apps, your own Power Automate flows, or Power Virtual Agents. We're now including in this Microsoft DataFlex licenses or the ability to use a light version of the Common Data Service plus Power Virtual Agents plus Power Apps plus Power Automate inside of Teams, right? So think of DataFlex as a Teams development platform for citizen developers, including the data platform, which used to be called the Common Data Service. So that's a little, if you're familiar with some of those things, that probably makes sense. There's a lot to this, and I think over time we'll dig into this. And I thought one of these other, I'll put this in the show notes. I thought this was a very useful article covered by Mark Mercuri a couple days ago on what's the difference between what was called the Common Data Service, which, by the way, is now called DataFlex Pro. So now you have DataFlex for Teams and DataFlex Pro. And this goes through like what are the capabilities, right, in both of those mostly from the data side, right? So you can see that the common data model, meaning those out-of-the-box entities like user and account, those are going to be actually coming to DataFlex for Teams. But some of the more advanced things like mobile offline and relevant search are going to stick in DataFlex Pro, as you would kind of assume they would. But this gives you also the ability to do virtual agents for bots Power Apps and Power Automate. This is largely meant for, again, teams delivered applications, but kind of more at the local level, right? This is not an enterprise solution. So if you need the enterprise kind of life cycle and all the governance and all the security options, obviously you're going to be probably looking at DataFlex Pro. But check out Bart's show. What time is Bart's show today, Doug?
Yeah, it is. So just go check out Dynamics Fortnite Friday, and they'll be digging deeper into this as they always do across a period of time as well. So
yeah, and same here. I can imagine. I think this is one we're going to want to dig into and probably build some demos and things like that.
Yeah, I would say Bart's going to lean to the pro, and you and I are going to lead to the team side. Like if you had to look for like an emphasis point on top of it, I was looking up top. If you were to look, like you scroll up the section right above, there's for me a huge differentiator. If you scroll a little bit down, that next set of bullet points where it said, hey, auditing, customer managed keys, field level security. There you go. That's there. Yep. You're starting to see the real meaty differentiation points, right? I was happy to see the common data model, the common entities are going to be in there, so you don't have to recreate your own customer entity. That would make me sad.
Bring those over.
Yeah, because if you had to then recreate those entities, I was wondering what was going to happen. So I'm glad that's in the coming soon.
I think that would have created nightmares because eventually what's going to happen here is some of these solutions are going to be created in DataFlex. They're going to need to grow up into DataFlex Pro solutions, and that would have been a nightmare. Right?
Yeah, so I don't want to do entity conversions as part of that process. That would be then in some ways we are doing the bad side of access if we didn't permit that. So good news.
I totally agree
that you're okay.
So one more here. Again, expect more from us in the future. There, that's an exciting announcement. Plus a new brand name. So that's always fun too, right? DataFlex. All right. So I think this one's super cool. So AI Builder, 2 pre-built models that are that we have to talk about today. Receipt processing, which is just really cool. So this is an example. It's a curated receipt, right? It's Contoso. We created this. It's a something that we built, right? But it's all crumpled up, and that looks like a pretty standard type of receipt that's able to not only get the kind of the name of the store and the address, but also these line items and break them out into their constituent parts, which is pretty cool. I know that we've been doing a lot of work on receipt processing for the last couple of years. So these, I think, have moved from, again, being toy and semi-useful services to something that's actually pretty deployable. So this is exciting. And of course, here we have the integration with Power Automate, right? So being able to process a receipt with this one purple action here, and then pushing those things into an Excel table, right? Even including the line items and things like that. So that's pretty slick. And then also a language translation. So pre-built AI Builder model for language translation too. So really, really good stuff. We're already 8 minutes over, so let's kind of wrap it up. But again, DataFlex, pretty exciting announcement for Teams development platform. And I really look forward to kind of seeing how those things evolve over time as well. So Corey, thanks for joining us, man. It was really good to have you on the show. Always good.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see some of where these things that were under R&D suddenly find their moment, right? I think that's one of the things. Now this lands right now, and so hopefully that go check out the rest of the stuff. Security announcements. Start thinking about defined software. Look at your Power BI relays.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a nice weekend in Minneapolis. Hope it's nice wherever you are and that you're watching. Hit us up at Microsoft or on Twitter if you have questions or want us to cover different things. As always, we appreciate the time from everyone. Signing off from wherever we all are. See y'all next week.
Cheers. Bye.